So I was sitting on the couch one day after school, and then I saw a car commercial about college. I mean, I was probably destined to go to college anyway, but I remember seeing that and thinking, man, that'll be fun. And yeah, I had a pretty good time. When JD returned from the Marines, he also went to college. He went to The Ohio State University. Except he had a bad time. Laundry day. So while I was drinking Sparks and playing offbeat psychedelic noise music, JD was in the Marines, and by his own admission, my final 2 years in the Marines flew by and were largely uneventful. So JD comes back from Iraq and he uses the GI Bill to go to The Ohio State University. He graduates summa cum laude with a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science and philosophy. During his first year in college, he worked for Republican State Senator Bob Schuler. JD says in his book, "I was a little too old to be a second-year college student, but with 4 years in the Marine Corps behind me, more separated me from the other students than age. During an undergraduate seminar in foreign policy, I listened as a 19-year-old classmate with a hideous beard spouted off about the Iraq War." Hideous beard? That could have been me! Without the beard. I didn't have a beard in college. JD goes on to write fairly eloquently about some kid in his class calling soldiers dumb and enjoying murdering Iraqis for sport. JD's take kind of does remind me of friends of mine that I talked to when they came home from Iraq. One friend told me about playing Metallica for Iraqi teenagers and how much they loved it. Many of my Marine Corps friends were staunch liberals who had no love for our commander-in-chief, then George W. Bush, and felt that we had sacrificed too much for too little gain. But none of them had ever uttered such unreflective tripe. And then he takes one last shot at the kid's beard. I thought about my friends who were covered in third-degree burns, lucky to have survived an IED attack in the Al-Qaim region of Iraq. And here was this dipshit in a spotty beard telling our class that we murdered people for sport. I never grew a beard in college, but if I did, I'm sure that it would be spotty and hideous. And even though I opposed the Iraq War, it was never about the troops on the ground. It was about the absolute psychopaths like Cheney and Rumsfeld.
You go to war with the army you have, and not the army you might want or wish to have at a later time.
Good old Republican values. It seems that JD didn't actually talk to this kid, he just listened to him in class. We all had classes where people had to push dumb and offensive ideas. This is very common in college and pretty much the entire point of college. Sometimes those people run for president, sometimes not.
That guy is somebody who is both insanely ambitious and insanely image conscious, but also totally numb to the idea that everyone around them is cringing. And so Vivek, in lecture of our moral philosophy class, hundreds of kids would raise his hand, and every time he raised his hand, he would do it in a specific way that I remember because it was in the shape of a V. And look, I'm not here to be a psychoanalyst.
In the shape of a V for his name?
He would raise his hand in the shape of a V, and it was like he was shining his own bat signal for terrible libertarian takes as a freshman in college.
How would professors take to him?
As that guy, he was also useful because he was the contrarian. Vivek on some level, he has prophesied truly that people from college would come out and start talking about him. He has said this. And so I just want to make clear, as a tool of the deep state here to undermine his campaign, I have been instructed to remind people that the dude has been ridiculous for 20 years.
Anecdotally, it does feel like it's more common for conservatives in college to staunchly push bad ideas in class just because they, A, want to be challenged, or B, are in a state of shock after living their whole life not being challenged. I had a Politics of War class where one of the texts was Killing Hope, a book about the U.S. military and CIA interventions that even ex-CIA officer John Stockwell called the single most useful summary of CIA history. We had to listen to a conservative blonde girl continually ask the professor why he hated America so much. It's like, lady, read the book. And of course, it's right, yes, we have to hear both sides. Perhaps maybe Richard Nixon had a good reason to call for the assassination of democratically elected president of Chile. I mean, let's hear him out.
I see skies of blue and clouds of white.
September 11th. Never forget. I did a presentation in a women's studies class about the 3 monotheistic religions, I don't have to name them here, and about their attitudes towards women. Now I think of it, I should probably send it to JD. You could probably get a lot out of it. Anyways, at the end of the presentation, I'm questioned by a student who says that I know nothing about the Quran. And she's right. I didn't actually read the Quran. I spent about a week on Wikipedia. I was a dumb college kid. But I took the L and I shut the fuck up. College is a time to question shit and then take some L's. But JD is so offended by this interaction, or not interaction, because I think he is just sitting there and listening to a kid talk. But he goes home and he does the math and he figures out how he can get through college and graduate as fast as possible. He gets a 4-year degree in about 2 years, and I do the opposite and spend 5 years getting a 4-year degree. During my college years, I came into contact with some people in groups that would later coincide with JD's life. First, remember this picture from earlier? So that is in Washington, D.C. in 2007. As soon as we got off the bus, we were told, "Get out of the way, draft dodgers," by some lovely bearded fellas in biker jackets. Now that's me and my friend Drew. We both shared a love of politics, particularly how hilariously stupid Fox News was then, but it also is now. So we would go to the local Circle K, grab a King Cobra or a Mad Dog 2020, and head back and watch the new Hannity and Combs, a sort of debate-style show that doesn't seem to exist anymore.
I loved your cable show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You miss doing that?
You're not having any eyeliner at all, are you?
No, he walks in, he says he needs eyeliner. What am I, in drag here? Come on.
No.
Left-wing extremist, Charles Grodin.
And here's the right-wing fascist, Sean Hahn.
A fascist? You call me a fascist?
You're a fascist.
Stop it.
Didn't you used to co-host the show? Did you not co-host with Goebbels before you met Alan?
That is so insulting. You're calling me a
I'm
Nazi?
a left-wing extremist. I didn't say you're a Nazi. I said your co-host was a Nazi. I think there is a difference.
Yeah, no, not really.
Everybody in the building loved him.
Yes.
And the one thing about Alan is he was one of the most liked people at Fox News ever.
One of the most liked people at Fox News ever. Wow. This one's for you, Alan. Ugh. Now, I've been doing music shows on college radio since my freshman year. But in 2007, Drew and I were watching Hannity and Combs, and we thought, how hard could this be? So we set out to parody the type of liberal versus conservative debate shows popular at the time. Hannity and Combs, Crossfire, other ones.
But I don't doubt for a minute these people who work for President Bush, who I disagree with and everything, they believe that stuff, John. This is not a lie or deception at all.
I think they believe in him.
I think they believe, just like I believe in my guys.
I think they believe President Bush would do a better job, and I believe the Kerry guys believe President Kerry would do a better job. But what I believe is they're not making honest arguments. So what they're doing is, in their mind, the ends justify the means.
I hate to say
at all.
I do think you're more fun on your show. Just my opinion.
But
John Stewart goes one-on-one with his fans.
You're as big a dick on your show as you are on any show.
Drew and I started a satirical call-in debate show where he was the liberal and I was the conservative, called The Great Debate. Tuesdays at 10 p.m. on WBGU 88.1 FM.
Every Tuesday at 10 p.m. on the prestigious WBGU 88.1 FM. The Great Debate, bringing you the news hard and fast.
We even had guests. Our biggest guest by far was conservative columnist and National Review editor Jonah Goldberg. He'd appeared on The Daily Show just days before, an appearance that apparently left him sour because he wrote an op-ed about it. He was mostly mad because the highlight of the interview came when he said that he was just looking for reasonable discourse across the political aisle, and Jon Stewart lifted up the book to show the audience its cover. Now would probably be a good time to give him the same treatment. He wanted reasonable discourse while promoting his book, Liberal Fascism, The Secret History of the American Left, From Mussolini to the Politics of Change. From famous American leftist Mussolini. That's just badly written, right? He had no editor for this book? All right. The book now strikes me as even dumber than it did then. In fact, for a more recent example of how dumb this trope has grown in conservative books, skip to part 7 of this series. This was 2008, and this guy was literally writing a book that was, actually the Z in Nazi stands for socialist, so how can they be right-wing? You know, it really seems that the theme of this whole series is just bad political instincts, but hey, it's actually kind of coming back in fashion, so it might be time for a reprint, Jonah. Just, step 1, search for liberal fascism in your book. Step 2, replace it with woke mind virus. Step 3, profit. Now, Drew and I will both admit that he did wipe the floor with us, and he even threw in this nice insult at the end.
I think you guys might want to downgrade the title of the show from Great Debates to, like, Debates or something.
But now that you're in the spotlight, JD, I can tell you that Jonah is also no fan of yours.
What does that make the JD Vance pick look like to you and to America?
A mistake.
Yeah.
No, look, I mean, I very rarely tout my own predictions because usually my predictions are so wrong. But the day after the convention, we recorded the Chris Wallace show on CNN, and I predicted that the honeymoon for Vance may not last as long as people think, and that it may have a rockier rollout than people think. I did not mean that by Monday this would seem like conventional wisdom. I thought it was going to be a few weeks or a month or whatever. And the fact that Vance's convention speech kind of sucked showed that he doesn't have a lot of great political chops.
A former alumni of my college was the current vice president of E! Entertainment Television, so he helped arrange for a handful of internships each summer, and I was lucky enough to get selected. So I spent a summer interning at E! and living in the Oakwood apartments in Burbank. While I was out there, I had very limited money. My parents were trying their best. My dad's incredibly resourceful, and he does much better with money than I could ever hope to. But nonetheless, I was living in Los Angeles, and it was costly. Luckily, I was out there with a high school friend of mine, and we decided to get a part-time job together. When we would leave our internship, we would walk together across Wilshire Boulevard to do evening shifts, making phone calls for whoever this company asked us to make phone calls for. This was the summer of 2006, right before the midterm elections, and everyone was pissed off. If we were calling to raise money for the Democrats, they were pissed off at George W. Bush. If we were calling to raise money for Republicans, they were pissed off at George W. Bush. One of the clients that we had to cold call for was the Heritage Foundation. I had not heard of the Heritage Foundation. I suspected they probably sucked, but at 22, I did not know then that think tanks pretty much control public policy. So there I was, taking a check funded by the Heritage Foundation, gallivanting across LA to go make it to an outdoor screening of An Inconvenient Truth presented by Al Gore in person, just living my best life, none the wiser. However, older JD Vance, he does know better, and he has become very acquainted with the Heritage Foundation. JD has even written the foreword to a book by the current president of the Heritage Foundation. A book that one can assume would be very damaging to JD's public persona because they moved the release date of the book until after the 2024 election. You may have actually heard of them recently, as the Heritage Foundation leads the 2025 Presidential Transition Project, also known as Project 2025, as an extensive plan to consolidate presidential control over the executive branch of government to accomplish its policy goals.
What is the relationship between the nominee and Project 2025?
Well, on one level, it's good that President Trump and his campaign distance their campaign from anything else, right? I mean, they're trying to win an election. Also, legally, it's important for people to know that Project 2025 is independent of any candidate. We've put this together for any candidate to lean on. But secondly, to the heart of your question, our relationship with Mr. Trump and his advisors remains very good.
The critical job of institutions such as Heritage is to lay the groundwork, and Heritage does such an incredible job at that.
On July 12, 2024, Heritage started a conspiracy theory that Biden could attempt to remain in office following the 2024 election by force, and that the 2024 election was illegitimate in advance. Yeah, you wish.
Baby, come back. Any kind of fool could see there was something in everything about you.
So, if you do know the Heritage Foundation, it's because you did like you were told and you Googled Project 2025. And if you'd like to go deeper into them, skip to part 7. But in 2006, I didn't know any better. I was too busy deciding if I should splurge and get the $1.25 Rodeo Burger from Burger King, which also we never knew if it was Rodeo Burger or Rodeo Burger, because LA has Rodeo Drive. But it was either the $1.25 Rodeo Burger or a regular burger and tap water, and then maybe we would split fries together if we had just got paid. It's safe to say that this was the period when both JD and I were breaking out of our Ohio bubble and exploring the different states. But still, we were out there meeting new people and seeing what life had to offer. JD went from OSU to Yale Law School. I wanted to apply to Harvard as a joke, just to get the rejection letter, and my dad said, if you have money to pay the application fee as a joke, then you can use that money to help pay for his college, and then the laughter ended and I never mentioned it again. At Yale, our buddy JD made some friends. We called ourselves the Island of Misfit Toys, as there was no real unifying force to our team. A conservative hillbilly from Appalachia, the super smart daughter of Indian immigrants, a black Canadian with decades worth of street smarts, a neuroscientist from Phoenix, an aspiring civil rights attorney born a few minutes from Yale's campus, and an extremely progressive lesbian with a fantastic sense of humor, among others. But we became excellent friends. Wow, JD, he's cool. There's just one problem here. Hey Sophs, here's an excerpt from my book, Mr. Vance wrote to his friend Sophia Nelson. I sent this to you not just to brag, but because I'm sure if you read it, you'll notice a reference to an extremely progressive lesbian. I recognize now that this may not accurately reflect how you think of yourself, and for that I'm really sorry, he wrote. I hope you're not offended, but if you are, I'm sorry. Love you, JD. Nelson wrote back the same day, calling Mr. Vance buddy, and thanking him for being sweet, adding, if you had written genderqueer radical pragmatist, nobody would know what you mean. Nelson asked for an autographed copy, then signed off with, love, Sophia. That's right, JD's friend who he called a lesbian actually identifies as transgender. Whoops! I hope you recognize that the description came from a place of ignorance when I first started writing years ago. Do you support the AR legislation criminalizing providing medical care to trans kids? Nelson texted him in April 2021. I do. I recognize this is awkward, but I'll always be honest with you, Mr. Vance responded. I think the trans thing with kids is so unstudied that it amounts to a form of experimentation. Nelson wrote back that his position deeply saddens me. I know I can't change your mind, but the political voice you have become seems so far from the man I got to know in law school, wrote Nelson. Later explaining their position as a trans person who accessed needed health care so I could live a full life. I have a 130, Mr. Vance wrote. I will always love you, but I really do think the left's cultural progressivism is making it harder for normal people to live their lives. You see, Sophs, the left's cultural progressivism just makes it so very hard for normal people to go on. So we have to have each state hire someone to look at every child's genitals and then give a thumbs up or thumbs down. JD sent his friend a signed copy of his book. To Sophia, a good friend, a fellow Midwesterner, and, despite being a godless liberal, a great person, JD Vance. A godless liberal and a great person? Who knew? You know, I do think that if JD and I had met under different circumstances in college, that we may have become friends.
And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
But when I went to write my memoir, I referred to him as a dipshit pigfucker just so my new East Coast liberal friends would be able to contextualize where he came from and understand this weird world that, oh God, blah, 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 blah.